Welcome to this week's episode of Whiskey Neat, spirited conversations with interesting people. I am your host, Kristopher Hart. I'm not used to holding a microphone. I'm not used to doing it in this way. But I do want to say one thing. I hope that even though that I look stupid right now, that you can fully grasp and feel how happy I am with what just happened right now in this room. We are at the some hotel in San Antonio, the Grand Hyatt in San Antonio, and I'm staying in the hotel that the entire cast of well, not the entire cast, but the main cast of Aquaman is staying in. Jason Momoa, Amber Heard, Dolph Lundgren. They're here for Celebrity Fan Fest here in San Antonio, which is like their version of Comic-Con. Fantastic event, fantastic guest lineup. I mean, they have several Avengers. Jeremy Renner's here. Anthony Mackie's here. It's been insane, right? So it's been a fantastic weekend here in San Antonio. And in order to make this happen, this is going to be a little bit longer of a read than normal for the intro because we had tons of support from several different brands to make this happen. Some of them were already supporting and signed up for the next few weeks. And some were just specifically signed up for this specific episode moving forward. Dolph Lundgren has been doing this for 35 years. He obviously got his major break in 1980-something with Rocky IV. I think it's 85. I don't know. 87. It's 87. I don't know. Doesn't matter. Point is, I've been a huge fan of him my entire life because my parents were, and my parents were huge fans. I've been a huge fan, and now he's doing comic book movies like Aquaman. He did Arrow on WB. Like he's an interesting individual. So I feel extremely blessed and extremely lucky to be able to sit down with him and have more than a few pours. So we actually were not expecting to have as many pours as we did. So I encourage you to sit around for the entire interview. It goes for about an hour and a half, and it was everything I could have wanted in an interview with Dolph goddamn Lundgren. So here, this week's episode, as always, is sponsored by Terlato Distell Artisan Spirits, leader in premium artisan products like Bunnahabhain, Deanston, Ledaig, Tobermory, Bains, Black Bottle, and Scottish Leader. You can pick up the entire line at your local liquor store, or if you are a retailer, reach out to your United Wine and Spirits rep. You hear that every week. You will hear that every week for the next year. They are huge sponsors of the show. I'm huge fans of them. Long before that, we have a couple more I want to read through. Belle Meade. This episode, that's right, we were just there at Belle Meade Distillery a couple weeks ago. Belle Meade, this week's episode is also brought to you by Belle Meade Bourbon. Aged to perfection, Belle Meade's high rye bourbon portfolio offers a variety of taste-tempting expressions, including their award-winning sherry, Madeira, and cognac finishes, as well as their classic small batch bourbon and the new Cask Strength Reserve. This week's episode, I do sit down with Dolph and we taste through Mr. Blonde. Those of you who've been following for quite some time on social media, you know that we did a Reservoir Dogs, a huge fan of Quentin Tarantino and his films, a Reservoir Dogs pick for Belle Meade, Mr. Blonde, picked by Deanna Gray. 12-year-old MGP, Cask Strength, and it's the first time I've had it in about 8 months, and cracked open a bottle, absolutely loved it. This week's episode is also brought to you by Balcones. In 2008, Balcones was nothing more than an idea driven by a passion to create something original and authentic. Focusing on ingredients and process, they breathed new life into Texas whiskey, earning them worldwide recognition for their products. You can pick up their whiskeys at your local liquor store, or if you're a retailer, reach out to your Southern Glazer's Wine and Spirits rep. Our last sponsor for this week's episode, I'm a huge fan of, and for those of you who are seeing this now, it'll be a week too late. Our barrel from Sagamore Rye would have already been sold, but Sagamore Rye is our last sponsor for this week's episode and our sponsor for the next month. Did you know that both Jim Beam and Basil Hayden learned how to distill in Maryland? It's true. Some of America's most famous distillers got their start in the Free State, and now Sagamore Spirit is picking up the torch. Today's production is brought to you by this award-winning Baltimore-based distillery, home of the world's best rye whiskey. Savor the spirit of Sagamore all over this great nation and look for their lineup at a local liquor store near you today. And now, without further ado, a legend in this industry, a great conversationalist, Dolph Lundgren. Well, first of all, I'm going to move this out of the way to give you a handshake. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thanks.
This is an interesting development. I mean, you've been, what was it, the Celeb Fan Fest? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, Celeb Fan Fest. Yeah, it's like a Comic-Con thing.
You've been here for both days?
Yeah, and there's a day tomorrow, but I'm going back to LA tomorrow.
Sure, sure. We have, I think, a similar thing in Houston, at Comicpalooza. Yeah. And it's such an overwhelming sensory overload type of experience. We see something like thousands and thousands of people I don't know how you do it, but I appreciate you taking the time to come up here and have a few drinks with me.
Thanks, man. I'm looking forward to it. I need it. No, what it is, it's great to see your fans, and it's good to interact with them because, when you're doing a film, obviously that's a controlled environment. There are no fans around there. And then you live in LA, you don't meet a lot of people because everybody's in the car, and people in LA are used to seeing celebrities, so nobody gives a shit.
You can cuss, by the way.
Yeah, okay, nobody gives a shit. But then you're in, when you go to these Comic-Cons, you get to meet these people, face to face. And it's enlightening in one way, and it's also encouraging because you realize why you're doing it. It's to make people feel good. And sometimes you're a bit shocked by how much some of these films or whatever projects you've done years ago mean to these people, and it's really great. I get a kick out of it. It's exhausting, but you get a kick out of it.
I wanted to ask you this early on. What's the most quoted thing that people yell at you from across the street?
Well, they don't usually yell across the street, but if they come up, they'll say, I must break you, or if he dies, he dies. Yeah. That's pretty much it. I mean, Creed 2 didn't have any real quotes like that. It takes a while, I think, for him to catch on, I'll be back, or make my day, or whatever. There are these short sentences that kind of tend to stick with people, frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn. There are a few of those that everybody knows.
Sure. Everyone's a
I was
fan
lucky to have one or two of them,
Two iconic ones.
Yeah.
So let's get you a drink. I'm sure you're in need of one. Do you have a preference? Are you a Scotch guy or a bourbon guy?
Mostly Scotch, but I don't mind trying bourbon. I like, lighter Scotch, but let's see what you got.
So we've got a couple things here. I think we could start off with a Deanston 15-year.
Sure.
So it's a little lighter. Let's see here. And I brought two types of glasses. I wasn't sure. I don't know if you're a rocks guy or a fancy guy.
Rocks, I think. Okay. I like some of the Japanese whiskeys. They're pretty good.
Yeah, I actually we had T.J. Miller. I don't know if you know, he's a comedian.
Okay.
We had him on. He does a lot of kids movies too, and we brought some Japanese whiskey as well. I wasn't sure what your flavor is, but
Hibiki. Is that Hibiki?
Hibiki 21.
Yeah, Hibiki, I like that one. Yeah.
Yeah, Japanese Scotch is always or not just Scotch, but Japanese whiskey is always a favorite.
Yeah.
We also brought some stuff from. There's some pre-prohibition rye there, some 1960s, 1980s. This 70s Wild Turkey is some of the best juice ever made.
Wow, so, where'd you get that?
I've been collecting them over the years. I have a whiskey festival in Houston that I do where we do like 400 whiskeys.
And that is from the actual 70s?
Yeah, 1978.
Really?
Yeah, 78 Wild Turkey. You can still find that on a few places online when they go up for auction. It's got the tax strip on it. The cork on those old bottles tend to fall apart pretty easily, so I put a pre-poured topper on it.
Gotta try that immediately.
Yeah, I've got this too. So this is also from the 70s. This is an old 70s Wild decanter. Never been opened. They used to put, back in the day, nobody would drink bourbon, so they would put them in any kind of ornament that they could.
Oh.
So yeah, I brought quite a few things. This here is from 1930s. It's what's left of some old Shinley rye.
Damn.
There's not much left of it, but we've been nursing it. It's a pretty incredible.
I'll have a sip maybe.
Pre-World War II.
But should I try a little bit of this? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Start at the top. I'll just have a little bit, just a little. And this is rye.
Yeah, that's rye whiskey. So in the early 1900s, rye whiskey was more popular.
Okay. And what's the difference? So the other one's made from corn, then, right? It is rye.
So with rye whiskey, its primary ingredient is going to be rye.
Yeah.
Rye, grain.
Right,
and then with bourbon, it's corn.
Corn, yeah.
So it's it's very resistant to cold weather. So it was very popular.
This one, yeah.
Bourbon, obviously, when World War II happened, and all the different government subsidies for corn, we've got a plethora of it. So bourbon became, bourbon's going through an explosion right now. So I wanted to make sure you had a little bit of everything.
100 proof.
It's going to be 50% alcohol.
Wow, that's strong, man.
Yeah, it'll put some.
Okay, you want to try a little bit of this too?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I'll pour you a little bit for you. That's interesting. No, I'm interested in history, so I'm going to head out and look at the Alamo again. I've seen it before, but I'm going to check it out again because I read up on it a bit, and we're going to check it out tomorrow. So, it's always fun when you travel out of LA, even in LA, but LA is more about the future. It's all about the next picture and all of that.
It's all about innovation.
Yeah, but when you get here, you really feel the history, and you feel like people really care about it more. In the South, Texas, even on the East Coast. But, LA is a little more, there's no time for that. People don't really care, Only if James Dean lived in that house. Or
sure,
like that,
sure. Some old celebrities from the 50s, sort of thing.
Exactly.
George Reeves lived in this house. It's a big deal.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
all right.
Well, I wanted to ask you as we taste this, I wrote down a few things that
man.
I'm dying to know personally. I don't care if my listeners give a crap, but you were King Nearest in Aquaman. How?
Oh, wow. Yeah. World War II.
Yeah, it tastes like World War II, right?
It does. In the 10th Mountain Division or something like that. You need that stuff. Wow.
It's got a... Wow.
It's got a kick from the alcohol.
I'm warm in the chest right now.
Yeah.
That'll wake you up.
And they say it's not supposed to help against cold, but people do drink it like in extreme situations. They have it for a reason. It does warm you up, right?
That's
blood circulation.
That's what they do with avalanche survivors. They send those dogs up there with whiskey because it'll keep you warm.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And it's delicious. So.
Oh wow. Okay. Man, that's tough.
Yeah. It's an interesting piece of history, and if you're not used to drinking it straight, I can imagine.
No, I'm not. But it's interesting. I'll have a sip of this stuff.
So after about 35 years doing this, you're still working an incredible amount. I saw recently you had 9 different projects in film coming.
It's called divorce.
You're staying really busy though.
No, it's not only that. No, I'm also interested. I mean, it's fun to I'll jump into, it's fun to stay busy, especially if things are going well. You want to kind of take a chance because life is not that long. I want to squeeze as much out of it as I can. I always did that.
Well, and I think you're doing just that. I mean, I know you're known for the action comics, but you've been doing, the recent superhero films. Aquaman was a great film. I almost didn't recognize you at first with the red hair.
I know. I didn't either when I see myself when I first tried the costume on.
Are you wanting to do more in that realm? More? Because you were the Punisher in the 80s, right?
Yeah, I've done these sort of
90s.
Kind of 80s, late 80s. I've done these sort of larger than life type characters like Masters of the Universe and the Punisher and to some degree, Universal Soldier was a little bit like that. But, these new superhero films are totally different. I mean, the scale of everything and the CGI and, the computer generation they're using there to make it spectacular is just so different. And they're so very, very tedious to shoot. So, Aquaman was one of those where it was the first time I was confronted with working with blue screen and never having, a lot of times never having anything to look at. I mean, the guy would just say, there's you have 1,000 warriors over here. You have, another 5,000 guys over on this side, and there's a ruin below, and you just got to imagine everything. And you're on the Sea Dragon and all that, and you're just hanging in these wires trying to figure everything out. So that I had never done those films before, but I like it, and I think it'd be fun to do some more of it for sure.
It almost sounds like an April Fool's joke that you've got. Just imagine that all this is here, and you're on a Sea Dragon. So
yeah, well. Yeah, it wasn't a joke because my first thing I had to do was get off the Sea Dragon, which was like piece of blue wood I was sitting on a platform about 10 feet up. And I was in a full costume, and these wires, and I had to kind of float off and float over past camera because I was going to meet somebody in the movie when I first appear. And I did that. I practiced, for 2 weeks before with a stunt team to be able to float. And you got to move your legs around in a certain way, whatever it is. And I did a take, and the director goes, "Oh, that's really nice. Good job, Dolph. Can you do it again? I just want to try something different." 30 takes later, the guy said, "Okay, I think we got it." It's like, oh man, I haven't even spoken the line yet. 30 takes. It's going to kill me.
It's an all-day affair, from what I understand.
Yeah, it is. It is.
So King Nearest, Aquaman, Creed 2, Rocky, and you were in Arrow, which Arrow was the second generation. I mean, I think the one that started it all was Smallville in the early 2000s, and now Arrow has been this huge hit. And you're doing both small screen and on-screen superhero stuff, and it's nice. I mean, I know you're still doing action. You're still doing a lot of that stuff. It's been overwhelmingly nice to see that transition from my mom grew up watching you, and now my aunt, not to make you sound old.
Hear that. I'm just kidding.
But I also, my parents introduced me to that. But when I grew up, and I'm sure Jack here, he's like 15, started watching this generation's iteration of superheroes, to see you kind of transition through time and still be badass. Yeah,
man. I'm happy. I didn't know it was going to go like that. Before about 10 years ago, I was living in Spain. I was getting divorced, and I had my ex-wife drag me to Spain, which is a beautiful place, nice wine. Kind of like this, but red wine, and just laying on the beach. But my career was, really doing very poorly down there. It was like this. Then Stallone called me out of the blue. By the script, I got the script off. Check it out. And then
I've heard about your incredible impression slide.
No, it was, page 3. It said, big drunk Swede with a knife or something like that. And I was like, okay, all right. So I checked that out, and then I was back on the big screen. But I never knew I was going to end up doing superhero stuff really again. I didn't think so.
Did you come back to it full circle?
Yeah, and what was cool was I came back, and I was fortunate enough to get these roles where it was kind of a little more about the drama and a little more about the humanity of the character rather than just beating somebody up, beating somebody to a pulp. I did that before. So these characters in Creed 2 and Aquaman was more about telling the story and trying to show an arc of a human being.
How was it coming back to play Ivan Drago after all this time in Creed 2?
It was fun.
You get asked that a lot. We can skip it.
No. It was fun. It was a challenge, and it's scary. And I didn't really want to do it at first because I thought, what if I mess it up? What if they just want to? Before I read the script, what if they just want a one-dimensional Russian bad guy again and all of that? So when I read the script, I realized no, they don't. But it's a real challenge, and I have to really deliver. So. Actually, there was 2 parts of it. One was the acting part, which was kind of a challenge, but a good challenge, and I was a little nervous about it. And the other part was seeing Sly again with his Converse sneakers and the hat and all of that, and and seeing Michael B. as Carl Weathers' son. All of that brought back some strange kind of memories. They're not really real memories, but they are in one way, right?
Nostalgia.
Yeah, nostalgia. And none of those characters really exist, but they sort of do, in a lot of people's minds, and kind of, I guess, including mine.
It had to be weird after all this time especially trying to recreate it, because, over time, that role became immortalized, right? So if anyone's doing a phenomenal job at bringing back the past, I think Sly's killing it. I mean, the Rambo movies have been fantastic. The Creed movies have been fantastic. He's doing a really great job, at least in my opinion, my ignorant opinion, of still honoring those iconic roles and doing a fantastic job.
Well, he is, because I think he writes from a personal perspective. Like if he, like you said, I was an actor, couldn't get a job, so I wrote a script about a boxer who was washed up and couldn't get a job. And then, when he did Rambo, there was something else in his life of Vietnam and all that. He was, I think he was involved in that, or he went to Europe, and I can't remember, he had some feelings about Vietnam, so he wrote that story about Rambo.
It was true to his life.
Yeah, true to his life. And then the characters kind of grow when he grows, and when he makes some movies that aren't so successful, and then he has to come back and he'll reach in and grab one of these guys again. Hey, John Rambo, what can you do for me right now? Because I feel like I'm a loser, so let's bring this guy back, and so I can get my life back on track. So he kind of uses them in that way.
So when did you move back from Spain?
I moved back in 2010, which right after Expendables opened. I moved back to LA, and I got divorced, and went through a bunch of heavy stuff personally, because when you get divorced, it's kind of like a failure, and you're dealing with your kids, having to explain it to your children, and then they weren't that old. Especially my youngest daughter was quite young, so they kind of get some traumatic experiences from it, and so it was tough. It was a hard period, and it took me a number of years to kind of get my footing as a person back, and kind of my self-confidence. And I did therapy and meditation and whatever I could find. I still do, but kind of brought me back a little bit so I can apply myself to some of these later roles. There's
this thing that happens when you're super young.
What are you drinking there, buddy?
I'm drinking the 15 I poured you. I accidentally gave you a little much, but
cheers. That's all right. You better get to the point, because if I have a few more of these, I'll be
crying.
Yeah, no, it won't make any sense.
So, ooh, that is hot. That's got.
Yeah, that's good, man.
Oh yeah,
that was really good. What is that again? Let me see.
So that's Deanston. It's 15-year-old Scotch. I'm a huge fan. They're doing a bit of a change in their branding the last few years. They're producing a lot. I know that we talked about how hot 100 proof is, but I don't like the 80 proof stuff. I like stuff that's a little bit more ABV behind it.
And what is this?
So this is 46%.
Yeah.
So it's not too much. It's not nearly as warm, but it's still really vibrant. And
you feel the difference, right? 4% difference.
Big difference, yeah.
It is, right?
So I'm a huge fan. I brought its cousin over there, and that cousin next to you, in the white label and the burgundy, that's closer to 60% alcohol. So that'll...
All right. That'll finish me off at the end of the show.
Well, if he dies, he dies.
Yes.
I had to slip it in once. What I was going to say is that in the 80s...
I'll do the Elvis after the show, baby, after the show.
You went through... most people nowadays, when they become super crazy famous internationally, they don't handle it well, right? And you became famous in the 80s, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you were young... You were just this total badass, and you were famous during probably, I'd say, arguably the hardest time to be famous, with the drugs in the 80s and the 90s, that whole thing. But now you sit across from me and you seem so at peace. You seem kind of so much, there's not a lot of, fire there. There's not a lot of anger, or you just seem like you've found yourself. Like you've centered a little bit, and you're just kind of enjoying things.
Sure, man. It only took 35 years.
You would hope.
Yeah, I wanted to be like this after the Rocky picture, and I was a bit more like this before that movie. If I think back when I used to fight, when I was a karate fighter and I was studying engineering, and we'll go to school, I would train every day in the dojo, and karate is very spiritual, and you show respect, and it's kind of internal, and takes a lot of focus, and I was very kind of calmer back then. But then I guess I had these pent-up emotions from when I was a kid. I had a problem with my dad. He was kind of abusive, and I had all that trauma that I used to be a good fighter. But I think when I got famous overnight, all that stuff just came up, and it kind of just took me on this crazy ride where I started making money and meeting all these women and everything. I didn't have any of that in my life before. I didn't even have a girlfriend when I was 25. I think I had like one girlfriend, and it just took me on this crazy ride, like where I just took the easy way out a lot of times. I mean, I worked hard, but I didn't really focus on my career, trying to center myself, and it took many years to get back to where I am now, I think.
To find a level-headed, low gravity, just a sense of peace.
Sense of peace and a sense of kind of self-respect, and kind of trying to respect yourself as an artist more, and trying to do good work. And kind of feeling my value a little more as a human being, you know, and as an artist. I didn't have that before. It's only come on very, very recently, actually, like maybe 3 years ago it started.
Did you ever find yourself wanting to do? Because I know you've done a few things. You're known to be the because you're still quite the martial artist, from what I understand.
Yeah, I still do it.
Did you ever want to do different, to be known for, other than the fight 'em ups? You know, did you? Because I could see you in some comedies. You know, what's that guy's name? We were just talking about him earlier, from the Taken movies.
Liam Neeson.
Liam Neeson. He is absolutely hilarious in this kind of serious, stoic.
Yeah.
He's been in some funny things that I've seen that I thought it was hilarious. Have you ever wanted to do a bunch of comedies before?
Well, you know, when I started, I was known I mean, on a personal level, I used to be known as the smart guy in class, the smartest guy in my class or in my school or whatever, you know. And then it became like the toughest guy in the dojo. So it was like a switch. And then suddenly I'm in show business, so I'm a little lost. Like, okay, I tried to become an actor, but after studying acting in New York for 6 months, I suddenly landed this big role. And I'm in Los Angeles, and I'm a movie star. Like, what the hell? And suddenly everybody wants to meet me, and all the chicks want to see me, and, you know, everybody wants to give me everything. And it's like,
sure,
okay, let me just go this way. And that kind of wave just swept me away for a long time. And you know, yeah, I wanted to do comedy. I wanted to do a bunch of other things. But you take a guy like Liam Neeson, for instance. I mean, he's been around for a long time, and he's a good actor. But I think he's another guy. He was sort of famous, but not really. And he when he got older, he got better. And at some point, when he was in his, I guess, 50s, he got taken, which made him a huge star.
Yeah.
Before that, he was kind of like an A-lister, but not really, because he didn't really find himself. But in that role, he kind of just brought it all down and made it internal, and he kind of internalized that character, and it became, and his power came out there in a very understated way that was really good for him. And I think once he found that character, he just used that character in other films. And whether it's funny or not, I don't know. I haven't seen him in a lot of comedies, but I think he's an interesting, watchable guy, like a real man, you know, like a real man's man.
Sure. Yeah, he definitely comes off that way.
But I don't know, he had to find that, you know. So.
The same thing with Keanu Reeves. I mean, he was famous, and then when John Wick came out, it just happened to be the right role.
Yeah.
The right production quality. I mean, the film was a piece of art, and then a huge, massive hit. And all of a sudden, Keanu Reeves is this, you know, I mean, we all have known Keanu Reeves for so long, but
surfer dude, you know.
Sure,
and,
yeah.
You know,
or Matthew McConaughey going through his, you know, McConaissance or whatever they were calling it. But he was known for romantic comedies, and he was known to be famous.
Yeah.
But certain people kind of wrote him off a little bit, and then when he started getting into some serious roles, you saw this different side of him as an older Matthew, not this young, pretty guy. You know, you saw him as a true talent.
I think you're right. I mean, some people get it quickly, and they know their power, and they find it immediately, you know, early on. And sometimes it can be in a disadvantage because you don't really know what you got because you didn't have to search for it. And if you lose it, and you can't get it back.
Sure.
Whereas if you have to search for it and you find it, like Humphrey Bogart or somebody who was playing a bad guy in all these gangster movies, and then, you know, when the Second World War started, suddenly everybody wanted this kind of, you know, a rugged sort of anti-hero type, and then he became a huge romantic lead, with Ingrid Bergman, and then he never, you know, I don't think anybody expected that. And I know on the list of all of the biggest, you know, movie stars, 100 biggest movie stars, he's number one. You know, what is it, the American AFI or whatever?
Sure.
He's number one. I don't think he ever expected that because he was just bad guy, you know, bad gangster guy, you know, in for his first 30 movies or something like that.
I'm gonna pour myself something else here.
Right. I'll follow your lead.
Let's see. Have you ever had a Texas whiskey?
A few more drinks from now, we can start talking about 54 and Studio 54 and all.
Yeah. So there were actually a couple things I didn't want to mention.
Yeah. Let's have a few more drinks first.
So have you ever had a Texas whiskey?
No.
No. Okay. So one of the oldest whiskey distilleries in the States is a place called Balcones. They're only 10 years old, but they make this is a Texas single malt, so it's a little bit closer to Scotch, but it's really intense.
Okay.
So it's 56% alcohol.
Oh man.
And I'll give you just a touch. I won't give you too much. Here.
Thank you. Only 56, huh? Jesus.
So that's actually a single barrel. One of the local places in Houston kind of went up there, picked out a private barrel, and bought the whole thing. It's actually quite common. We did that here and here, where we picked out our own private barrel and bought the whole barrel for our group. We have a local bourbon club in Houston.
Oh, that's so nice.
So you mentioned earlier, and I wasn't sure if I was going to bring it up because I think it gets brought up to you most in interviews, is your master's degree in chemical engineering.
Yes.
You are not just a pretty face and a rugged jaw. You are a incredibly intelligent person.
I try to be, but I try to hang on to it in Hollywood. It's difficult. But, you know.
And that was your game plan before becoming just a huge star.
Yeah, my game plan was to impress my dad, who was an engineer, and my older brother's an engineer. My other brother is an engineer as well. My mom was in languages. She was a language teacher, and I wanted to kind of impress them and show that I could take it further than they had done it, I guess. And I went to the same school as my dad in Sweden. It's the Royal Institute of Technology, and then I went to Sydney University on a scholarship, went to Clemson for a little bit, I went to Washington State, and then finally I got a scholarship to MIT, a Fulbright scholarship. And I was actually admitted to Caltech. But I remember that because I was in Sydney, it was like 6 months. There were 6 months difference because they're in the Southern Hemisphere. So I finished school in February. So I didn't get my final grades until later in the spring. So I wrote a letter to MIT to the professor, whoever was in charge. Said, could you please, wait before I get my final grades for admission because I really want to go to your school, and my dad, blah, blah, blah. I wrote this whole letter, and then he admitted me. I got admitted. And as a matter of fact, about 5 years ago, I was at LAX, going through the security there. I had a greeter, or what do you call it, airport rep, taking me through at the, X-ray machine. And there's some guy in front of me, and he goes, "You Dolph Lundgren?" I said, "Yeah." He says, I'm Professor so-and-so at MIT, and I'm the one who admitted you, who signed your admission document.
He never forgot.
No, I never forgot, 1983. So there you go. Yeah, I had a huge plan. I was going to go to MIT and get a PhD there and then go study master's. I get a master's in business and try to be the head of Exxon or something. I don't know. It didn't work out that way.
Still got plans to go back to it, I bet.
No, I don't, man. I'm not.
Well, I saw you
not smart anymore.
Like you said, those 9 projects plus you. I follow you on Instagram, so I saw your cologne commercial you did.
Oh yeah. The little fun one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nobody even knows that stuff. I got to try to get it sold here in the States. I'm not a businessman. I just do this stuff. If somebody says, "Oh, you want to do a cologne?" I said, "Fine," or whatever.
You want to do a whiskey? I know a few people.
Okay, cool. No, that cologne was an Italian cologne that I found it somewhere in Italy. I think I bought it, and then I really liked it. And then I contacted them somehow, and they did like a special edition, but I haven't really promoted it much, but maybe I will in the future. It's pretty good. It's sort of subtle, but I should get you a bottle, actually. We have some, right, in L.A., I think. I got a couple.
Yeah.
See if you like it.
Yeah, I mean, if you can get it in the States, I'll go, or in Houston, or in Texas, I'll go buy it. Have you tried that Texas whiskey yet?
Yeah, this one?
That one there, yeah, I think that was it.
Man,
so I'm completely...
This is, which one?
No, that's it's going to be this bottle here.
Did I try this? I tried this.
You've not tried it yet. That's 1978 Wild Turkey. That's I'm telling you, some of the best whiskey you've ever tried.
What's the oldest one you got?
So let's think here. So I've got some bourbon from 1940. It's an old bottle there. Now it's not.
That is pretty old, yeah.
In terms of because it doesn't age in the bottle, but the oldest one's probably the Hibiki 21. But that's peated.
Yeah.
You like smoky whiskeys?
Yeah. There's another one, right? There's another one that has the white label, right?
Correct. Yeah, that's going to be not smoky.
18 or something, yeah.
They do a 17 and a Hibiki Harmony, which is the real white and purple label.
Okay.
The 1978 is arguably one of my favorites.
This one.
That one there. That was the golden age of Wild Turkey. Nowadays, people kind of think of it.
Wild Turkey, yeah. It's like, what do you think of? Like the Stones or something like that? Don't you like Keith Richards?
Some Jack Daniels. And you think of like, it's got a little bit of a stereotype. But those in bourbon, people who are bourbon lovers are huge fans.
This is bourbon, right?
That's bourbon.
What's the difference? Bourbon is rye. No,
51% corn is the minimum, but you can go as high as 100% corn.
What's the difference between bourbon and whiskey then?
So whiskey is like an automobile, whereas a truck is a truck. Bourbon is very specific. There's rules and laws that you have to follow. So
what's the difference in the recipe?
No, you can. So I'll give you an example here. So you can take the same recipe, and if you put it in a used whiskey barrel, like it's already been used once, then it can only be called whiskey.
Right.
If you put it in a new barrel, it could be called bourbon. So there's some other rules there, but so whiskey's the overall category. Bourbon's very regulated and restricted. Then you get down to straight bourbon and Tennessee whiskey is also pretty heavily. So there's just more rules, basically.
Okay, so now I'm trying the Wild Turkey. You want to try that as well?
Absolutely. It's one of my favorites.
Go, man.
Now, so when this was put out, I think it was like $20 a bottle, give or take.
And what is it now?
Now, if you can find it at auction, it'll run you about $400.
Really?
A little shy. $375, $350.
Wow. Cheers, man.
Absolutely. Cheers.
So this is Wild Turkey from 1978, you said?
1978.
78. Where was I in 78? I was in college.
Probably in school.
School, yeah. I did my military service in Sweden in 1979.
I didn't know you were a vet.
Year and a half, yeah.
I went back and watched a bunch of movies I've always loved of yours before you came on, just to make sure I still remember how much I love them. And I even went and saw Kindergarten Cop 2.
Wow. Yeah.
And I didn't know that you were in the military.
I was, yeah. My dad was an officer, actually, so I had some ideas of becoming an officer as well, you know, in the reserves or something like that. But I thought about it. I'm very interested in the military because my dad was, you know, he was in the Swedish Army in World War II. Sweden was neutral, but the Germans, they invaded Norway, and Finland was fighting the Soviet Union, and Denmark was also invaded. So he was on the border. You know, in the winter there in 1942, 43, it was really cold during Stalingrad and all of that. So I think his whole adult life, he was shaped by those events of the Second World War. So I always heard about it when I was a kid, you know, and he had friends in the U.S. Army, like, because he wrote articles. He was an officer. He wrote articles about strategy and tactics and things like that. So he had, like, when I was very young, he had this U.S. sergeant who would come and visit us. I remember I think he must have been in the U.S. Army in Germany, probably, because anyway, or maybe at the embassy in Sweden. He was always in uniform. He was a black guy, you know, African American, and you know, I was in Sweden. I'd never seen an African American before. Neither had I'm not in life.
Sure.
You know? So I mean, I don't know if you'd say this, but it was weird. I mean, me and my sisters, we would just run and hide under the bed, you know.
Oh, you were scared?
And he showed up. Yeah, and he was in full uniform, and my dad would come and pull us out, you know, say hello, you know. So
right.
It's funny.
I've read that.
There you go, the 60s, man.
I've known people to go a lot of, because I'm 6'4".
Yeah.
I've known, there was a trip that came up a couple years ago where I was supposed to go to Japan, and they warned me. They were like, if you go, they're going to be staring at you. Because you know, tall white guy, it's a bit of an oddity to see over there. So I could totally understand that being confused or put off if you've never seen certain people.
Yeah, for sure. And he had another friend. I remember one of my neighbors was a sweet, tall, blonde guy. Well, he had gray hair. He must have been probably in his 50s back in 1960 then probably. And he was a Swedish guy a Swedish man who enlisted in the Waffen-SS in the late 30s, because you know a lot of people were impressed by the uniforms and all that. So he enlisted in the Waffen SS. He ended up in the Soviet Union fighting the Russians. And he was on tremendous battles there, of course, and then he got captured and sent to Siberia. And he survived somehow. And my dad was interested because he liked history, so he wanted to talk to him about what it was like to be there and, the battles and all that stuff. So I'm very interested in history.
I'm the same way when it comes to Westerns, and I was looking up.
This stuff's good, right? This wild turkey is really good.
Yes, this is what bourbon drinkers go pretty gaga over is the old turkey.
And you can buy this stuff online, or how do you buy it?
You have to buy it at an auction house or through some back channels if you know the right people. If you need something, let me know, and
I wouldn't mind buying one of those. 2 bottles, because I'm going to give one to my friend Craig Baumgarten. He loves bourbon. He would love that, right?
Oh yeah,
yeah. I'll buy 2 bottles.
Old turkey is some of the most coveted in the bourbon world. It's like you've heard of Pappy Van Winkle, and people who've been collecting bourbon for years prefer old bourbon to the new bottles of Pappy, which have kind of fallen off a little bit. So I'm a huge fan of history as well, specifically Westerns. Like I'm a huge fan of old spaghetti Westerns and the history there.
Okay.
And I was looking up you on IMDb, and I had never actually seen this, but you were working on a project that was abandoned. Let's see. A Man Will Rise.
Oh yeah, that was in Thailand.
Okay.
It was a weird movie in Thailand. I was I don't know what to call it, Thai Western or something. It was something I was there for, and it never happened. And then I ended up getting some financing for a picture I produced called Skin Trade about human trafficking. But I never did any Westerns. I was actually offered a part in a Western a couple of months ago, but I couldn't do it for certain reasons. But it was set right after the Civil War, and I was playing like some, you know how people came over from Europe, of course, during that time, and I was like a general, but from Europe, like second generation American back in those days, and it was a pretty cool script, but I couldn't make it. But I love the Western. Would be fun. It'd be fun to make.
I think it would be, even if it was a shoot 'em up or an action film, I think it would be very different. The picture I saw of you was all dressed up with a cigar in your mouth, and I thought that I could kind of see. I don't know if it was a real cigar, but it looked like something I'd be willing to watch.
From Thailand, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember.
You had I think a handlebar mustache in the film.
I did. I used to for another. I had another character that I was working on for another film, and I never did that, so I decided it looked really good. I think it reminded me of. It reminded me a bit of Robert Redford in Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid, when he has like that kind of blonde tousled hair and he has that mustache. It looks pretty cool, and and tanned. And I thought, oh, that's a good look, Sure. Kind of very, very classic sort of Western look. And I always wanted to use that. Maybe I'll use it for another character. Yeah, it looks pretty cool.
Yeah, I liked it. Have you? Speaking of cigars, are you a cigar guy?
A little bit, yeah. Yeah, I used to smoke a lot of cigars. I lived in Spain. I told you, I was married in Spain, and Spain gets really good Cuban cigars because they invested in Cuba when the Americans pulled out during Kennedy. The Spanish put a lot of money into it, so they get the best Cuban cigars. They get number 1, and then number 2 they said is Switzerland. Yeah,
trying to get cigars here is quite the endeavor.
I know. I know a couple of places you go in the back and they give them to you, but it's funny. It's been what 50 years, and it's come on.
We're still fighting it.
Yeah, I know, but Castro is like it's gone.
We should let it go.
I don't know. I've never been to Cuba. I hear it's a cool place. I hear it's some very nice old American cars there and stuff.
So I wanted to ask you a couple fun, silly questions. I'm sure you've gotten asked before. I'll tell you what, let me pour one more before we begin.
Yeah.
Have you ever, are you a rye drinker at all?
No, I don't know about rye. No, I don't.
Get you boozed up and ask you some serious questions.
I used to drink whiskey, but I haven't done much lately.
I'll give you a light pour here. This is Sagamore Rye. They're out of Maryland.
Rye. So with rye, would that be more of a... It's a rougher type of a drink, more working class, or what's the difference?
Oh, it's an interesting question.
Socially, economically, what's the difference?
That's a really interesting question. I've never thought about it that way. It's not working class. Nowadays, there's no stigmas around whiskeys unless it's watered down or flavored or adulterated in some way. Rye is just as well respected as bourbon, I think. Mm-hmm. But we are, as Americans, we are kind of obsessed a little bit with bourbon. Mm. It's kind of like those, and I'm making a stretch of a judgment here, but it's like those actors that are always in everything, and you don't understand why when there's a better actor that deserves to be there. Mm. Rye bourbon is great, but there's some really good ryes. There's some really great scotches out there, and for some reason we can't convince Americans to drink more scotch.
Okay, so bourbon came originally. Bourbon, what is that? Is that a French name or Bourbon?
Yes, Bourbon. Bourbon.
There was like the royal family,
correct.
Right? So where is that coming from? New Orleans or something like that?
So as far as I know, the exact origin of where bourbon comes from is a fight between two places. Kentucky says it was originated there. Okay. And they produce 98% of bourbon for the whole world. It's made right in Kentucky. Right. Louisiana also makes the same claim that it was Bourbon Street where bourbon came from, which was that count or some prince or royal family.
Bourbon, yeah, it's like
something Bourbon.
The Bourbon is, I think, is a royal family of France in the 17th century, 18th century, something like that.
It was one of those things I learned many years ago and have never talked about since I sat down with Dolph Lundgren, so I don't quite remember all the details.
Oh, shit. Oh, no, but I mean, I was interested. I shot, Expendables 1 was shot in New Orleans, and I spent 4 months there. And I'd been there before, but it's a very interesting city, the history and it was owned by the Spanish, then the French took it over, then Louisiana purchased. They bought it in 1810 or something. They bought the whole stretch of land from all the way down from the Gulf of Mexico up to
Washington.
To Washington. I mean, the whole swatch of land for like not much.
2/3 of the U.S. for like a couple $100.
Yeah, a couple hundred. Yeah, it was like
less than a bottle of wild turkey.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? Because Napoleon needed money for he was at war in Europe, and when you're in New Orleans. I remember in those days I used to drink a little more, coming out of some club or a bar or whatever, and you hail a cab and you ask, the guy says, "Where are you going?" And you look at him going, "Where am I, in Paris?" Or you don't know if you're in America or like, Guatemala or Paris. You don't know. It's like a weird kind of a blend. I like New Orleans a lot, actually. New York and New Orleans, I like those cities. They're cool. San Francisco too.
I would imagine if you travel as much as you do that it's hard to remember sometimes what city you're in.
Where you are.
Well, what I was going to ask was...
cheers.
Cigars. Cheers. Yeah, cheers.
So this is which one, though? This is
Sagamore. We did a private barrel. We bought the whole barrel from them, and it's actually unfiltered. So there's actually barrel char floating around in there, and that's because it's a raw product.
It's pretty good.
I'm a huge fan of it, and it's not even out yet. So you're actually tasting it before the barrel gets here next week. So our bourbon club, it only makes like 200 bottles or something like that for a private barrel.
One barrel is 200 bottles.
Depends on the proof and how much evaporates over time. But I bought a barrel of Four Roses last year that only yielded 70 bottles. So it's not much, but it's when you want whiskey, the single barrel is kind of like the dream. You want that single barrel, unfiltered. If there's barrel char floating around in there, that's great. Don't filter out the good stuff. It's like pulp in your orange juice.
It's like when you get red wine. If you get a Magnum or a double Magnum, it's always better because there's more air, there's more oxygen there. Then one regular bottle is not as good as a Magnum or a double Magnum. If you have a really great wine, you get a larger bottle, it's always better.
It's better.
Yeah, always.
Are you a fan of fortified wines?
Sherry's, a little bit, like port, you mean?
Sure.
Yeah, I know them. Yeah, I used to drink a lot of wines when I was in Spain because, the reason I went to Spain on a honeymoon was we lived in New York at the time because I wanted to go do a wine tour. And I started down in Marbella, southern Spain. I was going to go to Rioja and up in that district and check out all the wines. I had it all planned. And we stopped in Marbella, which is like a seaside town in the southern part of Spain, a little bit like Miami Beach or something like that. And we never left. We were there for like 3.5 weeks, you know.
That's awesome.
So I never made it up to Rioja and all those places, and then ended up buying a house there, and we ended up living there for 10 years. My ex-wife grew up in Spain, so she kind of dragged me there, and
Sure.
you know. But yeah, 45 wines. I mean, Jerez is right there, and Porto and Portugal is very close, so they drink a lot of those type of wines there.
I'm a huge fan, and for most bourbon drinkers, I think there's a nice translation from whiskey to fortified wines.
Yeah.
But this is a Texas whiskey, a Texas fortified wine it's actually got grandfathered in. It could be called sherry.
Oh, really?
And it's to me it kind
Like
of
a
tastes
dark sherry.
It tastes like pecans. So I thought it'd be interesting to taste you on a little bit of that.
Yeah, man. Why not?
I wanted to ask you earlier, who's more fun to drink with, Schwarzenegger or Stallone?
You know, I haven't had too many drinks with Schwarzenegger. I mean, I did back in 1983 when he was doing Conan the Destroyer, and I went out with Grace Jones, who was a singer who was in the picture.
Oh, I'm very familiar. I heard some stories.
Yeah, and I was doing a little bit of drinking with him, but I wasn't drinking much in those days because I was fighting, you know. But then with Sly, Sly is fun to drink with. He's got his own bourbon, I think. He's doing his own bourbon. I was up at his house.
I follow him, and he did announce it last year that he was working on
he was
something.
working on it. You know, and I was up at his house for Christmas Eve, actually, with my daughters, and there was some people up there. And he's funny. You know, he's so funny. He gives me these different bottles. He's got different ones there, and he's like, oh, this one sucks, you know, forget it, you know. Don't even drink, you know. He's funny like that, right? But, I mean, it was, he likes his bourbons, and he likes his whiskeys, for sure. You know, I'd tell you, I just thought of a story where we were doing Expendables 1, and we had this big press tour, and we're going to London, Paris, you know, Berlin, whatever it is. So we go to Paris, and we fly in on a private jet, and I was lucky enough to go with him, right, on the jet, and then he was staying at the Ritz, which they rebuilt now. But the old Ritz, which was the original Ritz, which is like it's two private mansions that they've like combined somehow.
Sure.
So, you know, we get in, we're jet lagged, we're in I think we're either in black tie or suits, whatever. We're about to go to the premiere, and we're in the lobby, and I'm waiting, and he shows up, and he's looking around going, I don't know about this place. I got a hallway bigger than this in my house, you know, so. Anyway, sure as hell. We do the premiere, and then I'm friends with this guy who's the GM of George Cinq Hotel, which is like #2 hotel. It's a very nice hotel in Paris. I'm friends with him. He's an American guy. I know him for many years. And so I invite him. We have like a little dinner afterwards, like 10 people, and Sly's there, and I'm with Chris, my friend. And we're sitting there talking, and then Sly says, Chris doesn't say anything. He's a sophisticated guy. So he's like, Christ, what do you do? He says to Chris, and he's like, yeah, he says, I work at the George Cinq Hotel. He says, what do you do there? I'm the general manager. He's like, oh, really? And then Chris is clever. He goes, he thinks for a second and says, yeah, you know, by the way, we got this cognac in the wine cellar there that was tapped the day, you know, the year Napoleon turned, 21 or whatever. It's from 1805 or something like that, right? And I see media to Stallone is like, and I say, if you want to come over, you can try some. And of course, boom, we're there at the George Cinq, smoking cigars, and then two guys come carrying this bottle from the
1800s.
cellar. Yeah, 1807 or whatever. And they pour, I think I got about this much, and Sly got a little more than me. And then we tried it. It was great, of course. It's raining. We're in the courtyard. I remember it was some kind of cover there. And sure as hell, in Expendables 2, we're not in the Ritz. We're at the George Cinq. So Chris was very clever.
He showed some love, though.
He was smart, man. And we stay there, and I got in there, and Chris, showed me my room, and it was a nice suite, not huge, but it was beautiful because there's two of these there's two suites that have terraces. Like, it's like a living room, a bedroom, and then there's kind of quite a large terrace, and you can see the Eiffel Tower and everything. And I went in there, I go, wow. And he says, don't worry, you have a better room than Arnold answered. You have the best room. So yeah, it was cool. That was cool. And that was, he was smart. He did that. I don't know how much that cognac was, but I'm not sure.
I could tell you it's probably a lot.
Yeah, it was a lot.
There's
a couple of $1,000 a shot, probably.
We were looking at bringing in some old cognac from the 1800s for my whiskey festival.
Oh, really?
And it very quickly can get into the $12,000, $13,000 a bottle range.
Crazy, right?
For something that's very old, and that's still very cheap compared to some whiskeys. Some 70-year-old Scotch, only 70 years old. Macallan just released one that's $75,000.
What's up? Man, that's crazy.
And I even if it's great, I still would rather enjoy the history of a bottle from the 1800s.
Me too.
The pre-phylloxera, I mean, it's just it's a time capsule.
Yeah.
To taste something that old, So Sly's fun to drink with. Is there someone you try to avoid drinking with? Someone that has either too much fun or not as well centered.
I was going to think, I don't want to say Jean-Claude Van Damme, but
Oh, he looks like he's centered too.
But
I
he's
like
very
him.
centered.
Yeah.
Let me think.
I like his new show on Amazon.
Oh, really?
He's got a new show on Amazon.
I haven't seen it.
It's about an old action star who's struggling to.
Oh yeah, I heard of that.
Yeah,
Have you seen? I haven't seen it. I hear it's good though, right?
Yeah, but he seems like
he's a very centered guy.
But he's not someone you want to drink with.
No, I wouldn't mind drinking with him. I wouldn't mind drinking with him. No, I don't know, man. I hardly had a drink up till I was about 25 because I was fighting. I was a karate fighter, and obviously any little bit of alcohol you have, it's going to impair your performance, and you get knocked out, you get your jaw broken or something. So you have quite a strong incentive, to stay focused. So when I came to New York and went out with Grace Jones, met Andy Warhol and all those people, they were all partying hard, drinking, doing drugs, and I would stay up with them all night, but I didn't really know why they so awake all the time. How come everybody seems to have a lot of energy? And they were looking at me going, how is he still up? Like, we're sitting across each other in the limo in those days. There was no SUVs, it was all limos, right? And, it was a long time before I started enjoying, having drinks and stuff like that. I didn't really understand it when I was that young.
Did you have I know you mentioned your dad was both very intelligent, but also a little bit rough around the edges.
For sure.
Did you have was it a sheltered existence? Were you not exposed to drinking? Was there a religious aspect to that where you just kind of didn't get to experience any life, and then all of a sudden you're hit with major fame and of course Grace Jones?
And all her friends. No, my dad didn't drink. He really didn't. So I think his dad was a really rough guy, a hunter, officer, military guy in Sweden who was in World War I, World War II. He drank a lot, and I think he was violent towards my dad. And I just heard that, and I think that's where my dad's trauma came from. But my dad didn't drink, so I wasn't really exposed to it. And when I was fighting, my sensei in the dojo, he didn't want anybody to drink, none of the guys in the team or anything.
Very disciplined.
Yeah, very disciplined. So I started, Grace, of course, she was friends with Andy Warhol and Michael Jackson, a bunch of people I ran into in New York when I came to New York. So it was a slow kind of exposure to a crazy world back, like you said, back in the 80s where, I remember going to dinner with her, and it must have 83 or something when I first showed up there, and it was her record company, and she was there and a bunch of friends, and people were passing this little vial along, with cocaine and doing, lines, and it was at the table in a big New York restaurant. Nobody cared, the waiters, nobody said anything, So it was no big deal. I didn't really understand what it was, but it was different then. It was before crack, so it wasn't really a social
It was more fun. It
Yeah, it
wasn't
was
as
fun. It was
serious.
for rich
It
people.
was before AIDS too, I think, right?
Before AIDS and
But
before...
for all the scary stuff.
Yeah, all the scary stuff. So nobody cared if a few rich people got high or whatever. It was their problem, you know. It wasn't like it was a social...
I think we're moving back towards that as well in terms of like
Maybe.
marijuana laws. Like
Yeah.
we're much more open-minded now than ever before with the stuff that's fun, not the scary stuff, right? We still want to avoid the heroin and the...
Yeah, where people break in, you know, kill each other and you know, become criminals because they're desperate. That didn't exist, you know. That didn't really exist when I came to New York. And there, like somebody said, there was a time between the introduction of contraception and the discovery of AIDS. There was 20 years that was different than what it is now, because people had a lot of sex, and it was a different lot. People didn't look at it the same way as it is now. I came at the end of that, New York, you know. But AIDS came in like 84 or so, 85, 85. Grace, a lot of her friends were gay, and a lot of people I knew that I met through her, and a lot of them are dead now. Or, you know, they died, which is very sad, because I was kind of close to a lot of those guys, you know, that helped her out, and her assistant, you know, a lot of people. I remember one guy. We went to London to do a Bond movie. She was in a Bond movie, and I had a small part in it. And Chris Walken was the bad guy, and we were in London for 6 months, and she rented out her apartment to this guy who was a British artist, designer. And he got sick when we were in London. Somebody said, "Oh, he got sick. He has pneumonia or something." He dies, right? And then we come back, and they say, "Oh, it's something called the gay plague." And I remember we're like, Grace too. We were like, "Shit, what do we do? We're like, can we stay in this place? Should we like clean everything out, get rid of all the plates and glasses? What do we do?"
The panic, yeah.
Yeah, we thought we were gonna.
Everybody thought it was real.
Yeah,
Everybody
like it was
afraid
a
of everything.
plague, you know.
Yeah.
And so it was a different time, for sure.
Luckily, I think.
I survived.
Yeah, luckily, I think we, you know, obviously, I think people approach everything now much differently. Everyone's not nearly as panicked when you know. I think people are much more calm now, at least in regards to personal freedoms. You want to go do this, you want to go do that, go do it. I'm not worried about it.
I think it's okay, you know. I think it's one way it's a good thing. I mean, a lot of people say it's crazy that marijuana is, you know, it's been legalized and all of that. I think, yeah, but what about, I mean, I love whiskey, but what about alcohol?
Alcohol's much
more.
more.
Come on, a lot of, how many families have been broken up because of alcohol? How many people got killed and, you know, beaten and whatever because of that, you know?
Drunk driving, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's got a much more dangerous track record than marijuana does.
I think so,
Yeah.
for sure.
Luckily, that's why we do this here, and then we're staying in this hotel, so I'm going to go up to my bed.
That's right, folks. No driving.
Be safe. I wanted to ask you, was there ever a role you really wish you did get but didn't get? Because I heard you were also in the running for Gladiator originally.
Well, you know, Gladiator is a funny story. I was living in New York at the time, and I got this script called Gladiator, and I read it, and I said, "Oh, this is a piece of crap." You know, who's ever going to make this? And it was before Crow was involved, or the director, what's his name?
Ridley Scott.
Ridley Scott. Yeah, so it was more of kind of a drama. It didn't have much action in it. As I recall, I thought, "Oh, forget it," you know. But I don't even know which role they wanted me for. I can't remember. No, I really don't think there's anything I can remember that I really wanted to make that I didn't get. I mean, I like Gladiator. It's one of my favorite pictures. I would have loved to be in it, for sure. I mean, I love movies like that, epic dramas, mythical pictures. I like that, you know.
Was there something that you could have gotten but passed on it? Like you didn't believe in it?
Which one? Another film, you mean?
Yeah.
No. I don't think so. No, I don't think so. I mean, I was just thinking the other day that it would be kind of cool to make a Viking movie, you know. because where I'm from and everything. And there's a lot of cool novels I read when I was a kid. There's some nice Viking novels that are quite good.
Well, I think
I thought that would be kind of interesting. I mean, now with modern CGI technique, you could get away without 10,000 extras and all of that.
I think you definitely have the aesthetic of a Viking. Is Viking still in the air? I know they're still. That show is pretty fantastic.
Yeah, I hear a lot of people like it. I think I've seen it once, but I mean, it's got like, doesn't it have dragons in it and stuff?
No.
That's the other one.
That's Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones.
And
I'm not into the
your
dragons.
your buddy Jason Momoa was in that early on.
He was very good in that. I saw him in that. He was very good.
I didn't realize how intertwined he is with all of your circle. Like he did a movie. He did the remake of Conan, the Barbarian. He was the new Conan. And then he did a movie that this movie didn't get good reviews, but I like this movie, and it's Bullet to the Head. And that was with Sylvester Stallone.
Yeah.
And
he was very good in that.
He had full tattoos. Sylvester was, I mean, people forget how insanely ripped he is, you know?
Yeah.
And he.
Sly, you mean?
Sly, right. Yes.
That.
And Jason Momoa was in that film too. He's the bad guy.
He was very good in that. That's the first time I saw him in that picture.
He's in that same circle. He's like the next, the freshman class of the 80s badasses, right?
I know. No, I like Jason. I just saw him today at the Comic-Con. He's a nice guy. I like him a lot. He's a very sweet guy. He's got that sort of old school movie star, larger than life presence, you know. Chicks dig him, of course, and guys like him too. I mean, it's like, it'd be fun to do something with him. And he was very nice. We were very friendly during Aquaman. I got along with him really well. It was funny because you said you didn't recognize me wearing the red wig and all that. And I remember first time I met him was he came out of my trailer, and I'm wearing the beard, and I think I wore part of the wig because they had like a long wig, then they have a short one because they do the hair flowing in the
water.
And the water is a CGI gag. So I come walking along in my robe, and I got my red beard, and I walk right past Jason. I never met him before. He comes up, and I see him, and I go, hey, Jason, how you doing? He's like, I'm fine, man. And then he just passes me, and then I keep walking. I'm thinking he's kind of rude. He comes running back, going, "Hey, man, I'm sorry, I didn't recognize you." Nice to meet you. Gave me a big hug.
Sure.
So I thought, yeah, I know instantly. I like the guy. And
he comes off very down to earth as well.
Yeah, he is. He is funny. He's funny. He's a funny guy. He was telling me Sly gave him some line readings or something in that film, Bullet to the Head. And like Jason is, fuck, I ain't gonna say it that way. I wouldn't say that to Sly. I'd be a little more like, I don't know, Sly, what do you think?
And he's a little shorter than you, I think. I think Sly's like 5'10", and you're 6'5".
6'4", maybe, yeah.
And I think Jason's about the same height.
He's the same as me.
Pour you. So I'll give you another option here. You get two more.
Last one.
Last one.
Then we'll hit the strip clubs. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
So I'll give you an option here. So I'll give you. Let me try on this. So this is a 12-year-old private barrel that we picked. I know most bourbon comes from Kentucky, but Belle Meade is actually my favorite Tennessee distiller.
Oh, Tennessee.
And this is actually sourced from Indiana, but it's a 12-year-old single barrel that we did with them, and we did it based off the movie Reservoir Dogs.
Oh wow!
So we did 6 barrels. And we named each barrel after a character from the movie. That's Mr. Blonde. That guy, is a fun movie. But we're huge fans of Belle Meade. That's another one of those distillers that have like their ancestors were distillers, and they ended up finding out in a weird way in their real close to their hometown that they didn't know that they lived that close to the old distillery, so they ended up starting the distillery based off their family's heritage, and they brought it back.
1853. This one, right? Is it this one?
That's it right there. Yeah.
This is what, like Kentucky?
No. So this is actually
Tennessee.
They're based in Tennessee, but they actually source the whiskey from Indiana. Yep. It's 12 years old, and it's only 104 proof, so about 52%. It's not too bad.
So strong. Man.
Maybe for Dolph Lundgren.
It's almost like a cognac.
It does have a very
Right?
richness to it, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're a cognac fan, huh?
A little bit.
A little bit. It's grape whiskey. I'm a fan. I like anything that's distilled, I'm a huge fan of.
Wow. Amazing. One thing, my favorite would have been the wild turkey and the this one.
The Deanston? The 15-year Scotch?
15, yeah. That was good.
Well, I really...
I have two more questions. The Japanese whiskey, and what do you think?
Okay. So, can I hope this comes across endearing, because I'm a father of 4.
Yes.
And my first 3 are daughters.
Oh, wow.
And the 2 oldest are...
Same wife?
Yes, I've only been married once.
Okay.
13 and 14. The 2 oldest daughters are 13 and 14.
Okay.
And I'm stressing a little bit about the coming years.
Mm-hmm.
You, and I mean this in all genuineness as a father, you come off as very close to your daughters.
Yes.
They comment on your Instagram a lot.
No, I was always determined not to follow my dad's footsteps when it came to taking care of, bringing up my children, really, because he was messed up and he couldn't really. I mean, I forgave him and he tried his best, and I love him still.
It's a different
many things he
time.
did. It's just that he was messed up from his own upbringing, and he couldn't figure it out. It's difficult, to like get through it. How do you deal with trauma like that? And he couldn't do it, and a lot of people can't. And I managed to pull it off somehow because I was determined not to hurt my children like that. So I'm very close to my daughters, and I'm very close to them. I'm open to them about all the stuff I go through. And when I went through the divorce, I went back and I asked them for forgiveness for what I had done, because I was drinking too much and I was mean to their mom, and I did some bad things, and I didn't beat them. My dad did. I never did that, but I still wasn't really a great father for a while. And I asked for forgiveness, and I told them I didn't like the way I was, and they started crying immediately when I told them. And I knew they'd had a lot of problems, trauma about it, and since then they know that their dad is not perfect, but he can admit his failures, and he loves them, and he doesn't want to try to hide anything from them, And I think that's the most important thing, to be open with your kids. Don't hide stuff from them, because they can handle it. They know it anyway. Kids are very smart, and you want to be open with them. That's the best way to go. So that's what I did with my daughters, and that's why we're so close. There's nothing they don't know about me, really. Well, maybe a few things in Studio 54, but that's about it.
And I know. So, and I learned this out. I think I found this out. Maybe a few months ago, maybe last year. But your first name really isn't Dolph. It's Hans.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure they call you Dad. But have they ever referred to you by your name, and would they refer to you as Dolph or Hans?
No, they never knew me as Hans. Hans was when I was a little kid, and up to about to about 20 or so. I took the name from my grandfather, and when I came to Hollywood, and I made it, and I got the Rocky picture, and I guess there must have been some instinct I had that I wanted to break with my past. I wanted to be a new person, and that's why I changed my name. Like,
is it legally changed to Dolph?
Cary Grant or whoever, excuse me? Legally, yes, it is. So they only know me as Dolph, but they only know me as Dad,
Sure.
So, but I think it doesn't really matter. I think it was just a matter of labeling yourself and trying to sort of break with the past and have the guts to just say, okay, I'm going to be a new person now. I want to be me. I don't want to be who necessarily my parents wanted me to be or my dad wanted me to be, but and I did that, and it was funny because I had an acting coach in New York, Warren Robertson, who I studied with when I did the Rocky IV. He helped me with the Rocky IV part, and I remember I was thinking of changing my name, you know, because I didn't like Hans. It was like you said, it was like a suit that's too small. You know, you outgrow your suit as a kid, as a little boy. You know, you have somebody bought you a suit, but now you're getting bigger and it's getting a little too short. You know, and you want to have a new suit. So Warren came up with the name Dolph. It came from a football player, actually, and my grandfather. But then I called Stallone, I remember, and asked him, you know, because I want to change my name. It's like, I think you should be like Nick. He's like, Nick Lundgren. I'll never forget that. Nick Lundgren on the phone.
So you asked
86 Nick Lundgren.
You asked Sly for advice, and he came up with Nick.
And then he came up over the phone. How funny is that? Like,
I feel like a more Hollywood
crazy
name would
back
be.
then. Even nothing has changed.
I feel like a more Hollywood name would have been Dick Lundgren. Like it would.
Yeah.
It would have been a little.
Back in the '60s, it wouldn't have been good. That's probably like Nixon, and unfortunately, you know,
He kind of ruined it a little
Yeah, he
bit. Well,
ruined it.
Dolph isn't too
Dick
far
Nick.
off from a ruined name as well.
tricky Dick.
All right, do you want to try the Japanese whiskey?
Okay.
Okay.
That the last few
He's
questions.
like, yeah.
No, I can actually sleep in tomorrow.
Yeah,
I got nothing going on. We're not leaving till later. I'm going to go check out the Alamo.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did some research on it. It's interesting history.
Texas has
Texas history, right?
absolutely.
Where are you from in Texas?
Houston. I was born and
Houston.
raised, yeah.
A very interesting history here, I think, with the Mexicans and the Spanish, and you know what you guys went through.
Not always the best track record, but we're trying.
No, I always liked Texas. I don't know. There's something about the people. They're kind of, I don't know. They're just
We get
kind
stereotyped.
of open. No, they're kind of open and kind of. There's something I don't know, kind of warm about them. I think Texas.
So I would
I don't
think
know how
so.
to say it, but
We get
always
stereotyped
enjoyed
a
it
little
here.
bit for our guns. We have loose gun laws here.
yeah, that's true.
We get
Yeah.
stereotyped a little bit, and then if you don't have any kind of Southern accent, people kind of like, "Where you're from Houston originally?" Yeah, I'm from Houston originally, but why don't you sound like a hick? You know?
Yeah.
So
No, but it's more sophisticated. Dallas is very sophisticated, by the way.
I mean, I don't know.
Don't you
about
think
that.
so?
That's
no, I mean here. I think
Dolph over here telling
Texas
lies
is
on Whiskey Neat
sophisticated,
over here.
isn't it? Like, there are a lot of people. I mean, there are a lot of big families there, like about they're-
You may not know this because you're not from here, but literally everyone in the state hates Dallas. So
they do.
yeah,
Why?
everyone. They're horrible. They're bad people.
Are
They smell weird.
They wear a lot of fur coats. and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
They're not fun to drink with. They're the they're the Jean-Claude Van Damme of drinking buddies.
Oh shit. No, but what is it with Texas? Texas is like a. What is it about it? This is something kind of laid back and sort of. Americans generally quite friendly and open-minded, I think, about the world and other nationalities and
Cultures.
so forth. Cultures, I think so. They don't really think they're better than everybody else. Like if you go to a lot of, like Italy, I love the Italians, but they always think they're the best at design, and the French and the same, and they have more hang-ups, I think, in Europe. Even though Europe is nice, but they have a lot of hang-ups. Americans don't seem to have that so much. They're kind of like, we're more kind of
Low
open.
maintenance.
Yeah, I think so. But Texas, I always liked Texas. I shot a couple of movies here. I always enjoy it here. I don't know. It's just something special. I can't put my finger on it. I don't know what it is.
Is there anything that hasn't been announced yet coming up that people might get excited about?
Well, I heard about Expendables 4. I can tell you all the...
Oh, you are
gossip.
doing Expendables 4.
I don't know much myself because I'm producing and directing a couple of small movies, but that I know about. But big stuff, Expendables 4, I think is coming up either this year or next year, beginning of next year. I think there's another Aquaman sequel being worked on. Just heard about today, actually. Creed 3, I heard about a few weeks ago that they're working on that. I think Michael B. Jordan may be directing. And it's, I think Drago is unfortunately still around, so he may be around helping out of some sort. And I'm working on this TV series in New York that I'm kind of excited about because, when I first came to America, I came to New York City, and I like New York, and my daughter lives there. My oldest daughter lives in New York, and I'm trying to put a series together about the United Nations security services. So it's kind of like a secret service for the United Nations. So kind kind of international, but it's spies and private security and hostage negotiation stuff before the United Nations. So it's like an action show, maybe for one of the networks, one of the majors. We hope.
I'm excited. Yeah, that
Yeah,
sounds
it could
great.
be kind of cool.
Like a 24 type thing.
Yeah, like a 24. Actually, some of the producers 24 involved. You're right. Sly's involved a little bit too.
Oh yeah.
We hope.
Yeah.
I don't know if I should say that, but anyway.
It's okay. Nobody wants.
No,
this.
but yeah, I'm excited about that one because I think the problem about features. I love doing Aquaman and all that, but you're in Australia for 4 months, then you're in Philly for 4 months, and you're in Italy for 3 months, and it's very hard to have a normal life. But if you're in New York City for 7 months, that's kind of cool, and that's nice, and it's comfortable, So hopefully it'll happen. We'll see.
Well, this has been fantastic. I didn't get to try you on the sherry, but I appreciate you coming.
What is this last one?
This the Japanese whiskey. I really can't tell you how much I appreciate this.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. This has been fun as hell, and if we're more than happy to come out to LA and do this with you and Sly together.
Sure, man. Why not?
When's Sly's whiskey coming out? Do you know?
It's a bourbon. I'll find out.
Listen,
I'll
I'm your
see
bourbon
him
guy.
next week.
I'm your bourbon
No,
guy.
I'll ask him. You send me a thing, and I'll talk to him when I see him.
As far as I know, there's no show doing what I'm doing.
I don't think so.
Except about 5 other shows that I know of. So
It's just 5. What the hell?
If you're,
I come up to Sly's house and do it there.
I would love to sit down with you guys, and we'll get some wireless mics. So we're not.
Don't worry.
Thank you so
I'll
much for
sponsor
coming.
you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, man. Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers. Cheers.